The Civil War was one of the greatest controversies that the United States of America had ever seen. It was the war that had come the closest to dividing the country as a whole. The main reason for the Civil War was that the Confederacy, the Southern states, were pro-slavery, while the Union, the Northern states, tried to stop this inequality. These two different opinions had led to terrible fighting, a war that killed over 620,000 people, ranging from southern Pennsylvania to Texas, the coast of New Mexico to Florida. At the end of this 4-year-long battle, the Union had come out on top and freed more than 4 million slaves in the U.S., and although the country was not fully united together, it was still one country. But what if something had changed? What if, at the Gettysburg Battle, the South had gained the higher ground instead of the North, and ended up winning? That would have changed the whole outcome of the war, beginning with this battle and leading on to others. What if the South had ended up winning the whole war? That would have changed many things, including short-term and long-term effects that would change our history forever. One of the most obvious short-term effects that would have come from the South winning the Civil War is a longer extension of slavery. The whole reason for this war was a difference of opinion on slavery, and if the pro-slavery side had won, then of course they would keep slavery. Maybe eventually this could have led to a long-term effect where racism in America now would be much higher than it already is because people would have had less time to get used to the equality. If the South had actually won the Civil War, maybe the Union would keep fighting to abolish slavery, that even more innocent lives would be lost in the process. Or maybe the North would give in to the South's idea to the acceptance of slavery and start applying it to their lives. Although this seems very outrageous, you never know which way the future can go with little changes made to the past. Another short-term effect that might have happened if the South had won the Civil War is who was president at the time. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States and the leader of our country at the time of the Civil War, was killed by a man who was pro-South. Hoping that bringing down Lincoln would cause a domino effect and bring down the Union, this man snuck into Lincoln's box at a theater and shot him in the head. Maybe if the South had kept the upper hand throughout the war, Lincoln's life could have been prolonged or preserved. The conservation of Lincoln's life could have caused a huge change in America at the time, and maybe even affected life as we know it now. He might have created a bill or a law or something that could have helped America and made it stronger. The short-term effect of preserving Lincoln's life could have led to a long-term effect involving all the presidents that came after Lincoln. If the South had been winning and there was no cause for Lincoln to be shot, then President Johnson would not have been asked to take on the presidency. This would have caused a huge ripple effect in our line of presidents. This would cause different presidents to be elected, different vice presidents, different choices being made for our countries, different wars being fought, different bills, different acts, different ideas, different inventions, different matters of opinions, different benefits, different hardships, a different United States altogether. Some people say a long-term effect that could have come from the South winning the Civil War is the separation of the North and the South states. If the North and the South had split into two separate countries, this means that the important geographical features of the United States might have changed. Maybe visiting New York City never would have been a big deal, causing the terrorists from 9/11 to rethink or choose a different place to attack. This would have saved the lives of the people who were killed in the attack, but maybe lost lives of people from the other place the terrorists chose to go. Although this seems far-fetched, anything can happen with a change in history. There are so many outcomes that could have come from the South winning the Civil War. What if the Union and the South had split and formed two separate countries, but then decided it was too hard to be alone, so they came back? What if them coming back together as one country made them weaker than they were before? What if it made them stronger? How would our country have been different? What if the separation of these states had caused an animosity between the North and the South? What if this animosity had built up and caused a new kind of racism? Not only would we have a racism between African American people and white people, but we'd have a racism between North and South people. Another thing to consider if the North and the South had split into separate countries is traveling. You'd have to get a passport to go maybe only 20 minutes away. If the South had won the Civil War, what if the African American slaves revolted against their masters? This could have started a whole other war between the African American and the white people. What if, in this new war, George Washington Carver's mother was killed and she wasn't able to have George? We wouldn't have figured out all the ways you could use a peanut, or maybe someone else would have discovered it, but not for years later, and not all the ways he did. What if, in this war, one of the grandparents of the Tuskegee Airmen was killed? We wouldn't have had one of the strongest Air Force groups to ever fly for the United States. Some of the African American people that have made a huge difference in American history might never have gotten their chance had the South won the Civil War. Although some of these ideas seem a little crazy, you never know what could happen with a change in history.